Cop slipped a found bag into her car. Then she pulled out a federal arrest warrant with his name on it. Subscribed to the channel, she thought it was just another routine traffic stop. Nothing to fear, nothing to hide. But the moment that mysterious, unclaimed bag landed on her passenger seat, her heart froze. Was this really happening? A familiar story, a familiar trap. Another black woman being blamed for something she never touched. But what the cop didn't know was that she wasn't just any target. And in the very next moment, everything would flip, because tucked in her purse was the one thing powerful enough to destroy him. So what happens when corruption plants evidence and the victim is ready? She lived a quiet, disciplined life, working long shifts at a local nonprofit, spending evenings reading case files that most people would find exhausting. Her name was Nia, a woman known for her calm strength and focus. Each morning she slipped into her modest car, drove through the same old streets, and dreamed of making real change. Not through protest signs, but through strategic action. She had fought battles before, but always within the law. Her routine was predictable, almost peaceful, and in a world full of chaos, that routine was her anchor. Though she rarely spoke about it, Nia understood how easily a black woman's reputation could be destroyed over a single accusation. She had seen friends lose everything over lies they couldn't disprove. That unspoken fear sat quietly in her mind like a shadow, but it never controlled her. She believed her knowledge of the justice system would protect her, just as she believed in fairness, even on the worst days. That night, as she drove down a dimly lit road heading home from a late meeting, her mind wandered to the documents she planned to file the next morning. Papers that named names, powerful names. Names of those who had abused authority and never faced consequences. She didn't know it yet, but someone else already suspected what she was about to expose. And they were willing to silence her in the oldest, dirtiest way imaginable. The flashing. Blue lights appeared out of nowhere, slicing through the darkness behind her as she drove. Nia pulled over calmly, thinking it was a routine check. She kept her hands steady, her breathing even, but her mind tightened at the memory of how easily things could go wrong. The officer walked slowly toward her car, his expression unreadable, his steps heavy with intent. Without explanation, he asked her to step out. She complied, silent, steady. Then came the moment that changed everything. He leaned into her car and pulled out a small plastic bag as if he'd just discovered it. Inside were crushed white pills, the kind that could cost someone their entire life. Her heart pounded as he held it up like a trophy. There was no way she could prove he had placed it there. He didn't say she was under arrest, not yet, but the threat hung in the air like poison. He stared at her with that cold, familiar look, like she was just another target, another statistic he could control. Her thoughts raced. She had spent months preparing the case files that exposed him and others like him. She had gathered proof of forged warrants, unlawful stops, and planted evidence, all connected to the same group of corrupt officers. And now, as if by cruel irony, she was being framed by the very person her paperwork condemned. He asked her what she was doing out so late, as if he didn't already know. She tried to stay composed, remembering every training, every rule about compliance. But inside, a storm was building. She realized this wasn't a random stop. Someone had followed her. Someone had known she carried dangerous evidence, and they chose to strike before she could submit it. She watched as he called for backup, laughing under his breath as though her downfall was already sealed. The second car arrived and parked. Behind hers, headlights still blinding. 2 more officers stepped out, 3 against 1. She could feel the weight of history pressing down, centuries of fear, false accusations, and planted guilt. Her mind screamed, but her face remained still, and just when it seemed like everything was over, a surge of clarity hit her. She reached for her bag, not in panic, but with calculated intention. Because inside was a single file folder and a federal arrest warrant, with his name printed in bold. And as she prepared to reveal it, the officers moved closer, ready to end her future before she even spoke. The air felt electric, sharp with danger as the officers surrounded her. Their hands hovered near their holsters, bodies tense, ready to act on a lie they themselves created. Naya could hear her own heartbeat thudding in her ears while one officer demanded she step farther away from her car. Another reached for handcuffs, smirking as though he had already won. In that moment, everything she had achieved, everything she had worked for, seemed like it might collapse into one horrifying moment of injustice. As she lifted the federal warrant out of her bag, their expressions shifted, but not enough to stop them. One officer's face twisted into rage, as if her knowledge of the law was more threatening than any weapon. They lunged toward her, trying to snatch the papers before she could speak. She held the document high like a shield, her voice steady and sharp, stating the one sentence that changed the energy around them. That warrant held probable cause against the very man framing her. The officers paused. Hesitation flickered. One glanced over the bold letters of the warrant with growing panic. Their arrogance cracked for the first time. Nia saw it in their eyes. Fear, not of her, but of the consequences they'd spent years escaping. She stood firm as their radios, cracked with incoming calls. Someone else had reported their activity. A witness, a camera. Suddenly, the power they tried to wield over her began to crumble. But the danger wasn't over. The lead officer stepped closer, eyes dark with fury, realizing his career and freedom might end that night. His voice low and threatening, he whispered something she'd never forget. It wasn't just about ruining her. It was about silencing her forever. She held her breath as he reached for his weapon, knowing this was the moment everything could either end or finally turn in her favor. The moment the lead officer reached for his weapon, sirens echoed in the distance. And this time, they weren't backing him. A civilian across the street had recorded everything. Backup arrived from a different precinct, and within minutes the dynamic shifted. The corrupt officers were pulled back and questioned on the spot, their confidence drained away. Nia handed over the warrant and every document she held, her hands shaking, not with fear, but with the weight of justice finally catching up. By the end of that night, the officer who tried to frame her was placed under official investigation, and her evidence sparked a case far bigger than anyone expected. She walked away free, but not untouched. The trauma of what happened would never truly leave her. She realized that even with proof, even with the law on her side, her life had still hung by a thread. Because in a world where skin color can make you guilty before you speak, justice is never guaranteed. It must be fought for. Her story became a catalyst. News stations aired the footage, protests reignited, and her silent work finally reached the spotlight. People began asking questions, not just about that officer, but about the system that allowed him to operate for so long. And while Naya found strength in surviving, she also felt the deeper ache of how many others never got that chance. So the next time someone says racism is just in the past, ask them this: how many more stories like hers will it take before we finally change the system? Not just the headlines. Subscribe to the channel for more stories.